They thought he was just a man shouting into a storm. A father too proud to admit his kid ran away, too stubborn to accept silence as an answer. The officer behind the desk didn't even look up when he spoke, just handed back the photo and said, "Sir, we've got real emergencies." But what they didn't see was what happened next. When he stepped outside, pulled out that cracked flip phone, and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. They didn't see the boots that began lacing up across town, where the rusted dog tags lifted from drawers, where the message that spread like wildfire across a brotherhood forged in blood and sand. What they didn't see was what it means when a veteran calls in a favor no one else knew still existed. And when the sun hit the rooftops that night, 100 figures stepped forward into the fading light, forming a chain that stretched across an entire city and shook it to its knees. If you believe a soldier's duty never truly ends, and no parent should be ignored when their child is missing, then like and subscribe. Because this story proves that honor doesn't retire, and when the system stays silent, loyalty steps in. It started with a silence too loud to ignore, the kind that wraps itself around a parent's ribs and squeezes harder with every unanswered ring. Staff Sergeant Darnell Brooks had seen war in more countries than most people could find on a map, but nothing compared to standing in a quiet kitchen at 7:08 p.m. staring at a phone that refused to buzz. His son, Malik, 14, bright, autistic, and clockwork consistent, always checked in after school. But today? Nothing. No call. No ping. Just that low electric dread that builds behind the eyes. Darnell didn't panic. Not yet. He retraced the route to school. Checked the basketball courts. Texted classmates. No one had seen Malik. By 8:13, he was at the precinct desk, a photo in hand, voice steady but urgent. "My son's missing." The officer behind the desk, 20-something, crisp haircut, arrogance polished to a shine, didn't even blink. "Give it time," he said. "He'll turn up. Maybe check the park. It's what kids do." Darnell tightened his jaw but said nothing. Not yet. He mentioned Malik's autism. The officer shrugged. "Still gotta wait 24 hours. When Darnell pressed, another cop leaned in with a half smirk. "We'll file it. But we're short-staffed. You know how it is." And just like that, a father was dismissed, filed away in the same drawer they keep the noise complaints and forgotten reports. But what they didn't realize, what they couldn't possibly grasp, was that Darnell Brooks didn't come alone. You see, some men hang up the uniform and walk away. Others carry it inside them like a fire that never dims. And Darnell? He didn't just serve, he commanded. His old unit called him Steel, not because he shouted, but because he never had to. He made choices under mortar fire with the same calm he now used to fold Malik's jacket every morning. So when the system shrugged and told him to wait, Darnell didn't. He stepped outside the precinct, stood beneath the flickering streetlight, and pulled out a phone older than half the cops inside. It barely had a screen, just numbers etched into plastic by time and memory. He dialed. One ring. Then a voice. Familiar. Gruff. Waiting. Darnell didn't explain. He didn't have to. He just said, "Malik's missing. I'm activating the grid." What followed can't be described as anything but deployment. In apartments, garages, and diners across the city, old men and women, once soldiers, now teachers, janitors, postal workers, received the same 5 words. And one by one, they moved. Maps unfolded on kitchen tables. Routes were marked in pen. Radios, real radios, came online. Flashlights charged. First aid kits dusted off. One Marine medic pinned on a patch she hadn't worn in 15 years. "Let's find our kid," she whispered. By 9 p.m., Malik's name was on the lips of veterans who hadn't spoken in months. By 9:30, they had combed through more of the city than any official search had all year. Darnell led the charge. No orders, no ranks, just movement. In the old way. Quiet, efficient, relentless. Some combed the river path. Others checked rooftops, alleyways, storm drains. One man borrowed a drone from his grandson. Another used a police scanner app to track dispatch calls in real time. They weren't playing soldier. They were executing a mission. The mission: find Malik and bring him home. Meanwhile, inside the precinct, one officer finally looked up from his desk. Sarge," he said, scrolling his feet. "Why are there vets in formation near the rail yard?" His sergeant grunted. "It's a free country." Then paused. "Wait, they're searching?" Someone else added, "I think they've covered more ground than we have maps for." But out there, beneath the rising wind and fading sky, the only sound that mattered was a quiet voice calling Malik. "Malik, can you hear me?" And somewhere near the edge of the industrial zone, from beneath the collapsed maintenance shaft hidden in brush, a voice, a real, scared, living voice, whimpered back. "Dad?" By 10:22 p.m., Malik was lifted gently from the dark. Cold, bruised, alive, wrapped in a thermal blanket older than him. Carried not by EMTs or officers, but by 3 veterans moving like they were still in the field. Darnell didn't cry when he saw his son. He just knelt, placed a hand on Malik's shoulder, and whispered, "Told you I'd come." And the city? It kept moving. But now, street by street, people were watching. Civilians filmed the chain of veterans walking Malik back to safety. One shot made it to local news, another to a national feed. And by morning, everyone was asking the same thing. Why didn't the police search? The answer was simple. They didn't believe him. They thought he was just a dad. But some men, when they lose faith in the system, build one of their own. The footage didn't just go viral, it detonated. By dawn, the city wasn't asking questions, it was demanding answers. News anchors leaned into the camera, eyebrows arched in disbelief as clips played on repeat. Grainy nighttime images of stoic veterans in hoodies and patched denim walking shoulder to shoulder, flashlights swinging like metronomes. Flanking a shivering boy in a blanket as if guarding something sacred. The headline beneath read, "Veterans locate missing teen hours before police take action." But back in Darnell's kitchen, the only sound was the kettle boiling and Malik's soft breathing from the living room couch, wrapped in the same blanket that once saved a downed pilot in Kandahar. Darnell didn't celebrate. He just made tea. 1 steeped back, 2 sugars. Same routine he used after every mission. Because this wasn't triumph. It was what should have happened in the first place. But the world didn't see it that way. His phone vibrated nonstop, calls from reporters, veteran groups, even a congressman's office wanting comment. But Darnell didn't have time for comment. He was busy reading an incident report the precinct finally emailed him, 12 hours late and riddled with inconsistencies. Child was likely at friend's home. No evidence of neglect. Civilian acted independently. Civilian. Like the word veteran had been redacted. But the city had eyes now, and people remembered what they saw. A local bar printed shirts overnight that read, "We ride with steel," in honor of Darnell's old call sign. High school students made signs that said, "Search like a soldier." And then, quietly, embarrassingly, the precinct issued a press statement. No podium. No apology. Just a PDF uploaded at 2:43 a.m. that called the veteran response, well-meaning but unauthorized. Unauthorized. That word landed like a slap across the city. Because if searching for your son is unauthorized, what exactly is authorized anymore? The next day, a protest formed in front of City Hall. Not loud. Not angry. Just 100 people standing shoulder to shoulder in silence, like the chain from the night before. Every one of them holding a flashlight. Meanwhile, Darnell walked Malik to school. Slow, steady steps. He didn't carry signs. Didn't do interviews. Just reminded his son to keep his phone on, to text after class, and to look both ways, then stood on the sidewalk watching until the doors closed. He didn't notice the teachers whispering to each other in the doorway. Didn't see the principal staring through the blinds, recognizing him from the news. But the kids noticed. One student fist-bumped Malik as he passed. Another said, "Your dad's a superhero." Malik didn't respond. He just smiled, fingers tracing the smooth edge of the dog tag his father slipped into his pocket that morning. Back at home, Darnell finally sat down, pulled out an old wooden box with peeling varnish, and opened it for the first time in over a decade. Inside, a folded mission map, a few unit patches, and a contact sheet, names, cities, numbers. He ran a finger down the list. Some names were crossed out, deceased, MIA, lost to time, but others? Still solid. Still listening. That night, they met again. Not in uniform. Not in a hall. Just on a group call with coffee mugs and weathered faces. A dozen veterans who'd walked into darkness together more than once, now on Zoom, debating something they hadn't dared say out loud in years. What if we build something better? Not to replace law enforcement, but to fill the gap it never seems to reach. A grassroots rapid response network. Civilian-led. Veteran-organized. A grid. For kids like Malik. For moments like this. The next day, a neighborhood mom reached out. Her daughter hadn't come home. Only 2 hours late, but she remembered the story. Remembered the chain. She texted Darnell, not the police. And within 30 minutes, 2 vets were parked outside her house, calmly walking the park trail. The girl showed up safe, just lost track of time, but the mom cried anyway. Not from fear. From relief. From knowing someone actually came, word spread. Quietly. Effectively. By week's end, the grid was real. No badges. No sirens. Just old boots, borrowed walkies, and the kind of coordination that only comes from years in uniform. And the precinct? Still silent. Still stiff. But inside, some officers had started looking up Darnell's name on their own. One rookie sergeant stood outside the locker room reading Malik's story on his phone, while behind him, another cop whispered, "They made us look bad." But the rookie shook his head. "No. They made us look away." That night, an envelope arrived on Darnell's doorstep. No return address. Just a folded note. "You changed the mission. Thank you." And inside, a city council badge, slid off quietly by a man who didn't know how else to say sorry. It didn't end with headlines or hashtags. It ended in quieter ways, the kind that don't make the evening news but change the rhythm of a city forever. It ended when the school installed a sign-in kiosk where every parent could get instant alerts, and no one mocked it. When kids started wearing small whistle keychains handed out by volunteers who never said where the money came from. It ended when people stopped rolling their eyes at missing person flyers and started asking, "What's the grid saying?" It ended when silence stopped being normal. But for me, it didn't feel like an ending at all. Because every time I looked at Malik brushing his teeth without being reminded, or setting his alarm without being asked, I saw the invisible scar that night left on him. And maybe on me, too. I didn't want recognition. I didn't want thanks. I just wanted that look in his eyes, tight, scared, like he'd been abandoned by more than gravity, to fade for good. So I kept going. Not because I had to, but because I knew I couldn't stop. That's the thing about missions. They don't care about your calendar. They arrive when no one else does. People started reaching out. Quietly. A single mom from 4 streets over, worried her ex might take her daughter during pickup. A teacher who noticed a boy falling asleep in class with bruises he wouldn't talk about. A grandmother who said her teenage grandson had run away twice already, and I'm too old to chase him, but I know someone who isn't. None of them called the cops first. They called us. Called me. And every time they did, the chain moved. We never raised voices. We didn't wear uniforms. We just showed up. Steady. Respectful. Direct. Like we were taught. I still remember the night a new volunteer showed up at one of our coordination meets. A 19-year-old kid who barely spoke until he said, "My brother went missing 2 years ago." The cops said he was probably couch surfing. They never found him. I'm here so no one else hears that. We handed him a map and a flashlight and never questioned him again. Because in the grid, you don't need a resume. You just need heart and movement and the discipline to show up when others sleep. The city tried to make amends. Quietly, a council member offered to integrate our work into the emergency management structure. I told them we didn't need integration. We needed respect. They asked if we wanted funding. I said no. We needed trust. They asked if we had a mission statement. I said yes. Get there faster. Find them sooner. Leave no one behind. That was it. One day a sergeant from the precinct showed up at my door. Not to argue, just to sit. He brought a box of donuts and a folded letter of apology he'd written, but didn't have the guts to say out loud. I read it in front of him, then handed it back. "We all get chances," I said. "Use yours better." He nodded and left without shaking my hand. But the next time a kid went missing, his unit called me first. And we found that boy in under 3 hours. Cold, hiding under a bridge, clutching a backpack full of cereal bars and notes he'd never meant to send. He looked up at me and said, "I didn't know grown-ups came for kids like me." That line, I hear it in my sleep sometimes. I hear it when I watch Malik walk to school now, taller, steadier, still holding the dog tag I gave him that night like it's a compass. I hear it when I get messages from other cities, other dads, asking, "How do we start something like the grid here?" I hear it every time someone rings my doorbell with fear in their eyes and a photo in their hands. They all ask the same question, "Can you help?" And I always say the same thing, "We already are." But the moment that will stay with me, etched deeper than the night we found Malik, is what happened 6 months later, on Veterans Day. I didn't plan to go. I wasn't wearing a uniform. But Malik asked me to come to the school assembly. Said he had a thing he wanted me to hear. I sat in the back, arms crossed, trying to be invisible. The auditorium was full of flags and folding chairs and stiff applause. Until Malik walked to the microphone. He didn't read a poem. He didn't recite a name. He held up my old dog tag and said 10 words that made the entire room forget how to breathe. My dad never left the service. He just changed missions. Just like that, the air changed. Teachers froze mid-clap. Parents put down their phones. Even the mayor, who showed up late with an entourage, took off his glasses and lowered his head. That moment wasn't about me. It was about every kid who'd been forgotten until someone moved. It was about every veteran who thought their usefulness ended with their final salute. It was about the promise we made to ourselves long ago, that when the world turned away, we'd lean in. That night, I passed a mural being painted near 6th and Lincoln. It wasn't big, just a string of silhouettes holding hands across the city skyline. But beneath it, in bold letters, were 3 words: "The chain remains." I stood there for a long time, long after the paint had dried, because they finally understood. Saving people isn't about heroism. It's about showing up when no one else will. Not for glory, not for permission, but because someone, somewhere, is whispering they're gone, and praying someone will whisper back, "We're coming." That's the grid. That's the mission. That's the chain. And as long as I breathe, it will never break.